Okay, so are you ready to get into some serious AI research? All
Always.
right, because we're going to be taking a look at scaling pre-training to 100 billion data for vision language models.
Wow.
It's a mouthful.
Yeah, that is a mouthful.
But it's from Google DeepMind, and this is like hot off the press research from February 2025.
Very cool.
And, basically what we're talking about is vision language models, AI, that can understand both pictures and text.
Yeah,
And so the question they're trying to answer in this paper is, what happens when you train these models on a ridiculous amount of data?
right.
100 billion image-text pairs.
Huge.
Does more data always equal a smarter AI?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? I mean, researchers have been noticing this pattern called scaling laws. Basically, as you feed the model more data, it gets better. But those improvements, they start to kind of shrink as the data set grows. Yeah. So the big question here is, whether those scaling laws still hold true even at this massive scale.
So they built this data set they're calling WebL 100B, and it's 100 billion image-text pairs. I mean,
Wow.
pictures of everything under the sun with descriptions, in all kinds of languages.
That's amazing.
It's mind-boggling to think about the sheer variety in this data set.
It's a behemoth,
It is.
for sure. And they actually created smaller data sets as well, a 1 billion and a 10 billion, just for comparison.
Yeah.
Um, But the cool thing is that they were really careful about making sure there was a lot of diversity in the data set.
Yeah.
They wanted to make sure that the data was multilingual. It was pulling from tons of different sources to make it a really good reflection of the world.
That's so important.
We don't want our AI to be stuck in an echo chamber, right?
They do not.
Yeah.
Now they used a vision language model called SIGLIP
Okay.
and trained it on these different data sets. And they even threw in different model sizes like ViaT B16, ViaT L16, and ViaT H14,
Wow.
just to see how all that factored in.
So they're really trying to isolate these variables
Yeah.
by changing both the amount of data and the model size, to try to really get a clear picture of how each impacts the results.
So what did they find?
That's a great question.
Did more data always equal better performance?
Well, not exactly.
Okay.
When they ran those kind of traditional tests, like, ImageNet for object recognition and COCO captions for image descriptions,
Right.
they saw minimal improvements with the 100 billion data set.
Mm.
It's almost like they hit a performance ceiling on those specific tasks.
So maybe scaling up data isn't like the be-all, end-all key for every AI task.
Yeah, that seems to be the case, especially with those well-established benchmarks that really focus on, a narrow set of concepts.
Yeah.
But there were some really cool results
Okay.
when it came to tasks related to cultural diversity.
Oh, interesting.
Using that 100 billion data scale, it just supercharged the AI's performance in these areas.
So, for example, they found that geolocalization,
Uh-huh.
which is basically like guessing where a photo was taken based on what's in it, became significantly more accurate. It's like the AI developed a much richer understanding of the world
Yeah.
just by being exposed to more diverse examples.
Exactly. And that's what's so fascinating about this. The model trained on the 100 billion dataset could pinpoint the geographic origin of these images, even images from less represented parts of the world, with really impressive accuracy.
Wow.
It was picking up on these really subtle cultural nuances and visual cues
Yeah.
that you just wouldn't find in smaller datasets.
So it's like exposing the AI to more cultures through this data
Right.
actually helps it to understand those cultures better.
Exactly, and that's a really critical takeaway. If we're aiming to build AI that truly reflects and interacts with our world, we can't just focus on those traditional, often Western-centric benchmarks.
Right, definitely not. And it wasn't just about location either.
Right.
They found that the AI's ability to understand languages that are spoken by smaller populations,
Yeah.
what they call low-resource languages,
Yeah.
got a big boost from this enormous data set.
Yeah,
It's like the AI started to pick up on these subtle patterns
right.
that are only found in these less common languages.
It's really cool. This has huge implications. Imagine having machine translation tools that could accurately handle indigenous languages, or having educational resources that were tailored to students in regions with limited access to technology.
That's incredible.
It's about making AI more inclusive and accessible.
It's about broadening the reach of AI
Yeah.
and making sure it benefits a wider range of people.
Absolutely.
And this research shows that more data, especially when it's diverse and representative, can play a crucial role in achieving that.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, this research opens up some incredible possibilities, but
Yeah.
it's not without its challenges.
Sure.
One thing they looked at was, how fair the AI was.
Okay.
Did it show any biases based on factors like gender or occupation? And
Yeah.
unfortunately, more data didn't magically solve that problem.
So even with 100 billion examples, some biases still slip through the cracks?
They did.
We can't assume that more data automatically leads to a more ethical AI.
You can't, it's a reminder that data alone isn't a cure-all.
Right.
We need to actively be developing techniques to address those biases head on
Yeah.
and make sure that, the AI we're creating is both effective and responsible.
Now, to tackle some of the messiness inherent in raw web data,
Right.
they experimented with some filtering techniques.
Yeah.
They haven't tried using CLIP,
Oh, cool.
which is a popular vision language model to try to cherry pick the highest quality image text pairs.
Like having an AI quality control expert clean up the data set.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
And so what they found was really interesting.
Uh-huh.
Filtering definitely improved performance on those standard benchmarks that we talked about earlier, like ImageNet and Coco captions.
Okay.
However,
Oh,
it actually had a negative impact on tasks related to cultural diversity.
oh, wow. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a potential problem with data filtering
Yeah.
is that by trying to improve the overall quality, we might accidentally be erasing valuable information,
Yeah.
especially from underrepresented cultures.
It's like cleaning your house so thoroughly that you accidentally throw away something important.
Exactly.
It's tough.
Yeah, it is. It highlights the need to, carefully consider the data that we use and the potential consequences of our choices.
For sure.
AI isn't just about algorithms and numbers. It's about understanding and interacting with the world in all its complexity.
Yeah. Yeah, it really makes you think about those choices we make when we're curating these data sets.
Yeah.
Are we unintentionally limiting the AI's ability to see the full spectrum of human experience by being too selective?
Yeah, it's a question worth thinking about for sure. And it leads us to another fascinating aspect of the research.
Okay.
They noticed that those low-resource languages, the ones spoken by smaller populations,
Yeah.
they actually made up a tiny fraction of the total data, less than 1%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that obviously, puts those languages at a disadvantage when it comes to training the AI.
If the AI doesn't encounter a language very often, it's going to have a harder time learning it.
Exactly right. It's like trying to learn a new language from a textbook that only has a couple of pages.
Yeah.
So to address this, they decided to upsample those languages,
Okay.
giving them equal representation in the data set.
So they're basically amplifying those quieter voices in the data set
Precisely.
to make sure the AI is paying attention.
Exactly.
And did that work?
Well, this simple adjustment led to some pretty noticeable improvements on that multilingual benchmark,
Cool.
especially for those low-resource languages.
That's amazing.
It's really cool. It shows the power of intentional data curation.
Yeah.
By making a conscious effort to include a wider range of languages,
Right.
they were able to significantly improve the AI's multilingual capabilities.
We have the power to shape how this AI learns.
That's right. We're not just passive observers,
right.
We're active participants in its development,
Now, they didn't just stop at evaluating the AI's ability to understand images and text.
right?
They also wanted to see how it would perform on more creative tasks,
Uh-huh.
like image captioning or answering questions about a scene.
Right. They wanted to push the boundaries.
Yeah.
And see if this AI trained on 100 billion image-text pairs could actually generate creative content.
So could it, write a poem about a picture of a sunset?
That's a good question.
Or compose a song based on a photo of a bustling city street?
Well, the results in this area were less clear-cut.
Okay.
Sometimes scaling up the data helped, sometimes it didn't. It seems like for these generative tasks where the AI is actually creating something new,
Right.
rather than just recognizing patterns, other factors might be at play.
Maybe the type of training or the model's architecture plays a bigger role.
Yeah, could be.
It's like even with the best ingredients, you still need the right recipe and a skilled chef to make a masterpiece.
That's a great analogy.
They-
And it's an area that's ripe for further exploration.
For sure.
What happens when you combine these massive data sets with new training techniques specifically designed to foster creativity?
Now that's interesting.
It's a good question.
Speaking of exploring further,
Yeah.
the paper also kind of dives into how the model actually sees and understands images.
Okay.
They visualize these things called attention maps,
Uh-huh.
which basically show you which parts of the image the AI is focusing on when it's making a decision.
Oh, cool. So it's like looking under the hood to see what's going on in the AI's brain?
Exactly.
That's awesome.
And they found something pretty interesting.
What's that?
Models trained on larger data sets
Yeah.
tend to have more focused attention on the most important parts of an image. They're not getting distracted by background noise.
So it's like they develop a more refined understanding of what's truly relevant.
Right.
Like an art connoisseur who can immediately spot the key elements of a masterpiece.
They gave this example of an image of a traditional Igorot dance from the Philippines.
Okay.
And the model trained on the 100 billion data set
Yeah.
zeroed in on the intricate patterns on the dancers' costumes
Oh, wow.
and the specific objects they were holding.
Interesting.
These details are like culturally significant, and the AI seemed to understand that.
Like the AI isn't just recognizing objects, it's actually appreciating their cultural context.
Yeah.
It's a level of understanding that we just haven't seen before.
The models trained on smaller data sets were more likely to get sidetracked by less relevant elements in the background or miss those crucial cultural cues.
So it's like the difference between someone who's just glancing at a scene versus someone who's really taken the time to observe and appreciate the deeper meaning.
It highlights the importance of exposure.
It does.
The more the AI sees, the better it becomes at discerning what's truly important,
The more it learns.
whether it's in a cultural context or a more general scene.
Right.
They also showed an example of a bison in Yellowstone National Park.
Okay.
And the model trained on the 100 billion dataset accurately honed in on the bison,
Uh-huh.
while the other models were more interested in the surrounding landscape.
So even for familiar concepts, that massive data set helps the AI to really sharpen its focus.
It's like training your eye to see the world through the lens of an expert.
That's cool. It makes you wonder, what other hidden patterns and connections are waiting to be uncovered
Yeah.
when we feed these AI models with just massive amounts of data.
What other secrets of the universe might they reveal?
Exactly. That's the beauty of this research. It's not just about achieving higher scores on benchmarks.
Right.
It's about expanding the boundaries of what AI can understand
Yeah.
and how it can interact with the world. It's about pushing the limits of human knowledge.
Yeah, it feels like we're really on the verge of like a whole new era of AI.
I think so too.
We're seeing these just mind-blowing advancements, and it's all thanks to the crazy volume of data that we have
Right.
to work with now.
It's pretty incredible.
But obviously, this much power comes with some big questions.
Yeah, for sure.
About how we use it responsibly.
Absolutely. And, to their credit, the researchers behind this paper,
Yeah.
they acknowledge those ethical implications.
Yeah.
They're very upfront about the need to address those potential issues like bias and inclusivity.
They're not shying away from the tough stuff,
Not at all.
which is good to see.
Yeah, it's refreshing.
They're emphasizing that more data isn't a cure-all.
Right.
It can actually make existing biases worse
Yeah, if we're not careful,
if we're not careful.
it's a big responsibility.
It is. So we need to be really deliberate about where our data comes from
Yeah,
and actively develop techniques to try to mitigate that potential bias.
absolutely.
The goal is to make sure that AI benefits everyone,
Right.
not just a select few.
It's about fairness.
Yeah, it's a call to action for the whole AI community.
I agree.
Researchers, developers, policymakers,
Everybody.
everyone needs to be part of this conversation.
Yeah, we need to all be thinking critically about the impact of this technology.
And how do we steer it in a positive direction?
Exactly. It's not just a technical challenge, it's a human one.
We need to understand our own values
Right.
and use that to guide AI development.
And make sure it aligns with those values.
Okay, so what does all this mean for you, the listener?
Yeah, good question.
Well, it means we're living in a time of incredible potential.
We are.
AI has the power to totally revolutionize so many aspects of our lives.
For sure.
But that means we have a responsibility to stay informed
Yes.
and engaged.
To really understand what's happening.
We need to be asking questions about these systems
Right.
and how they're being developed.
Making sure that they're designed and used in a way that benefits all of us.
This isn't about just watching from the sidelines.
Yeah, we all need to be part of this.
This is about participating in the conversation.
Absolutely.
We all have a role to play in shaping the future of AI
Yeah.
and making sure it leads to a better world for everyone.
I think that's a great point to end on. It's inspiring to think about.
Yeah.
If we can train AI to understand the subtle cultural significance of a dance from a tiny village in the Philippines,
Yeah.
imagine what else we can achieve.
It's pretty mind-blowing.
What other amazing things are out there waiting to be discovered?
And how can we use those discoveries to make the world a better place?
To bridge those divides and create more understanding and build a more just and compassionate world.
That's the real challenge.
It is.
That's what we need to be working towards.
I think so, yeah.